From the outside, everything about Claire and Daniel's marriage looked flawless. Their smiles graced magazine covers. Their anniversary photos flooded social media, all filtered light and matching outfits. The caption always read, "Love looks like this, but behind closed doors." The silence between them was louder than applause. Their house was immaculate, like a showroom, and touched by real life. Claire knew which angle to face for every camera, which joke to laugh at during interviews, and which hand to hold just long enough for the flash. Daniel was charming, polished, the kind of man who could make anyone believe he adored his wife. Everyone except her. One evening, after a charity gala, Claire stepped out of the car first, her heels echoing against the driveway. She waited for Daniel to follow. He didn't. He was on his phone, his voice low but urgent. When she called his name, he looked up with a rehearsed smile. "Just business," he said. She nodded, pretending to believe him the same way she had every time before. Inside, she removed her earrings, her reflection in the mirror smiling back at her, perfectly composed, utterly fake. She whispered to herself, "If I stop pretending, everything falls apart." But the next morning, while scrolling through social media, a photo stopped her heart. Daniel, at the gala, caught in a candid moment, his hand resting on the back of another woman. His gaze soft in a way it never was with her. The world saw a loving husband. Claire saw the truth, and for the first time, she realized their perfect marriage wasn't a partnership. It was a performance, and she was the only one who didn't know she was acting. That photo changed everything. Claire didn't confront Daniel right away. She wanted to see how long he could keep pretending. At breakfast, he kissed her cheek, poured her coffee, and talked about his upcoming meetings as if their entire world hadn't just cracked. She played along, smiling in all the right places. But inside, something in her had shifted. She was done being part of the script. That afternoon, she called the PR agency that managed their image. "Cancel next week's shoot," she said calmly. The woman on the line hesitated. "Daniel approved it already." "Then tell him," Claire replied. His co-star quit. She hung up before the woman could answer. When Daniel came home that night, she was sitting in the dark, the only light coming from the photo glowing on her tablet screen. "You should be more careful," she said. He froze. "Where did you get that?" "The internet," she said coldly. "It's where our marriage lives anyway." He sighed, rubbing his temples. "Claire, it's not what it looks like. It never is," she replied. "But tell me, does she know her part in this show?" His silence was enough. She stood, the calm in her voice more dangerous than anger. "You built an empire on image. Daniel, congratulations. Just remember, even perfect things crack when no one's watching." That night, she slept in the guest room. For the first time in years, she didn't rehearse her smile in the mirror. She didn't have to, because the act was finally over and the woman behind the performance was waking up. The next morning, the headlines hit harder than coffee. Claire and Daniel West in trouble behind the perfect smile. Their fans called it gossip, but Claire knew it was the truth finally leaking through the cracks. Daniel's team called her nonstop, asking for a statement, a denial, anything to calm the storm. She said nothing. Silence was her rebellion. At noon, Daniel came storming into the house, waving his phone. "What the hell did you do?" "Nothing," she said, setting her cup down. "And it's driving you crazy, isn't it?" He glared at her, veins tense in his neck. "You're ruining both of us." "No," Claire said evenly. "I'm just done saving you." He started pacing. "You think this is easy? Keeping everything together? You like the life, the parties, the money, the illusion," she interrupted. "That's what I liked. Because at least illusions don't lie. They just fade." He stared at her like he didn't recognize her anymore. Maybe he didn't. The woman standing before him wasn't the quiet, smiling wife he'd built his reputation on. She was the truth, and truth, he was learning, didn't flatter. Later that night, while he hid in his office making calls, Claire opened the safe in their bedroom and pulled out a folder contracts, financial statements, documents she had once signed without reading. Now she read every line. She realized even her security, her comfort, had been scripted. He hadn't just written their love story. He'd written her dependence. Closing the folder, she whispered, "The performance is over." And for the first time in years, she didn't feel afraid. She felt powerful. Claire began planning her escape the way Daniel planned their image, carefully, strategically, and with no emotion. She met with a lawyer in secret, a woman who didn't blink at fame or scandal. "You've got more power than you think," the lawyer said, sliding a folder across the desk. Inside were papers that could free her financial separation, asset division, full ownership of her own brand. For the first time, Claire saw her name alone on a document. It looked strange. It looked right. Back home, Daniel was already in damage control mode. The press had calmed, but rumors swirled. "We'll fix this," he said one night, his tone more business than love. "We'll do a new interview, a charity event. Remind people why they love us." Claire looked at him, truly looked at him, the polished smile, the empty charm. The man who sold their marriage like a product. "You mean remind them why they love ***, she said quietly. He frowned. "Claire, don't do this. You're not thinking clearly." She smiled. "No, Daniel, for the first time, I am." He stepped closer, lowering his voice. "If you walk away, everything collapses. Then let it," she whispered. That night, she packed her suitcase. Every dress, every diamond, every reminder of the life she'd been forced to perform, she left behind. When she reached the door, she paused and turned back. Daniel stood at the top of the stairs, his voice breaking. "You can't just walk away from us." Claire met his eyes one last time. "There is no us, Daniel. There's just a stage. And I'm done performing." She stepped out into the night, rain spilling from the sky like applause fading after the final act. For the first time in years, she wasn't playing a role, she was living her truth. Claire didn't have a plan after leaving, only freedom and a suitcase. She checked into a small coastal inn 2 hours from the city, a place where no one cared about last names or glossy magazine covers. The sea air stung her face, but it felt clean, real. She spent the first few days just walking barefoot on the sand, learning how to breathe again without cameras watching. But the world she'd left behind wasn't quiet. News outlets speculated, headlines screamed **golden couple in crisis." Daniel's PR team released statements denying everything. Claire didn't respond. Her silence became its own statement, one that spoke louder than any headline. Weeks passed. One morning, she woke to an email from a journalist. "We'd like to hear your side of the story." For the first time, she didn't delete it. She agreed to one interview, her first and last. When it aired, she didn't cry or accuse. She just told the truth. "Our marriage was beautiful," she said. "But beauty without honesty is performance. And eventually, even the best performances end." The public reaction was immediate. Some called her brave, others said she was dramatic. But Claire didn't read the comments. She was sitting by the shore that evening, watching waves erase footprints from the sand. Her phone buzzed a message from an unknown number. "You were always better at being real than I was. D***." She stared at it for a moment, then deleted it. No anger, no longing, just peace. As the sun dipped below the horizon, Claire smiled to herself. Her marriage had been a show, but this quiet moment by the sea was her curtain call. And this time, the applause came from within. A few weeks after the interview, Claire's life settled into a quiet rhythm. She rented a small studio near the harbor, where she painted during the day and wrote in the evenings. Her story had spread far beyond what she imagined. People sent her letters, strangers, who said her honesty gave them courage to leave their own perfect prisons. She read every one of them, sometimes with tears, sometimes with a soft smile. For the first time, her name wasn't tied to Daniel's. It was hers alone. One afternoon, as she was sketching by the window. A knock echoed through the studio. She opened the door to find a delivery man holding a large envelope. No sender. Inside was a single photograph of her and Daniel from their first year together, laughing at something only they knew. On the back, one line, asterisk, I did love you, I just didn't know how, asterisk, she said for a long time. Staring at it, the ache that rose in her chest wasn't anger or longing. It was compassion for both of them. They had both been actors in a play they didn't write, chasing a version of happiness that never fit. That night, she placed the photo in a drawer and whispered, I hope he learns how. Someday. Then she turned off the light and slept peacefully, without dreams. The next morning, her phone rang. It was the same journalist. Claire, your story was nominated for a feature. Asterisk, women who rebuilt themselves. Asterisk, she laughed softly. Rebuilt? No, I just stopped pretending. I wasn't broken. And as the sea shimmered outside her window, she realized it was the most honest line she had ever spoken. Months passed like pages turning in a book Claire finally chose to read for herself. Her art began to sell, not because of her name, but because people felt something in it: honesty, pain, rebirth. The gallery owner, a kind woman named Elise, often told her, you paint the silence between words, and maybe that was true. Claire had spent years living in those silences. One morning, Elise told her that a major art magazine wanted to feature her work. They're calling it asterisk, the woman who unlearned perfection, asterisk. Claire smiled. The title stung and healed at once. The interview felt different this time. No makeup team, no publicist feeding her lines. Just her, sunlight, and truth. The journalist asked, do you ever miss him? Claire hesitated, then said, I miss who I thought he was, but I don't miss who I became with him. That line made it to the cover. It went viral. Suddenly, Claire was not just an artist, she was a voice for every woman who had smiled through her own performance. A month later, at a gallery opening, she saw Daniel again. He looked smaller somehow, his confidence dimmed. He approached slowly, hands in his pockets. You look different, he said. Free, she nodded. That's what truth does, he exhaled. I read your interview. I figured you would, she said. You made a career out of watching me. He winced but didn't argue. I wanted to say I'm sorry. Claire looked at him not with anger, but with distance. You should tell that to the man who believed his own lies. They stood there, the noise of the crowd fading. Two people who had once played love but now stood as strangers. Before leaving, he said, you turned our story into art. Claire smiled faintly. No, I turned my pain into purpose. Our story was just the canvas. That night, she walked home under the soft glow of city lights, her reflection rippling in shop windows, not the woman performing perfection, but the one who survived it. For the first time, she realized freedom wasn't something you found. It was something you finally stopped hiding from. The next month felt like a second life, one that Claire finally owned. Her days were simple, painting, reading, and sometimes just sitting by the window, doing nothing at all. And that nothing, she realized, was everything she had been missing. The world still whispered her name occasionally, old headlines resurfacing. Documentaries rehashing the Weston scandal, but she didn't flinch anymore. Her story no longer belonged to tabloids. It belonged to her. One morning, Elise handed her a letter that had arrived at the gallery. It wasn't from a journalist or admirer. It was from Daniel's sister, Anna. Asterisk, he's not well. Asterisk, it read. Asterisk, he's been asking about you. Asterisk, Claire read it twice, her chest tightening. Part of her wanted to throw it away. The other part, the one that still remembered his laugh, his warmth before the lies hesitated. A week later, she found herself standing outside a quiet rehabilitation center on the outskirts of the city. Inside, Daniel sat by a window, thinner, quieter, his once perfect posture now slouched. He looked up, disbelief flickering in his tired eyes. You came, he whispered. Claire nodded. Not for the past, she said, for closure. He gave a broken smile. I kept performing, even when no one was watching. I didn't know how to stop. You stop, she said gently. By forgiving yourself. Tears welled in his eyes. But she didn't reach for him. They had already said everything that mattered in the silence between them. After a moment, she stood. Goodbye, Daniel. Goodbye. Claire, he said softly, and for the first time. It didn't sound like a scene, it sounded real. When she walked out, the air felt different, lighter. She wasn't leaving him this time. She was leaving the ghost of who she'd been. And somewhere deep inside, she knew forgiveness wasn't about freeing him. It was about freeing herself. Weeks later, Claire returned to her studio by the sea. The air smelled like salt and new beginnings. She spent her mornings painting waves wild, uncontained, always moving forward. Her nights were quiet, but not lonely. The silence that once scared her now felt like home. One afternoon, while cleaning brushes, she found a small box tucked behind her canvas shelf. Inside were mementos from her old life, the engagement ring, a handwritten vow, a photo from the wedding day. She sat on the floor, the sunlight cutting across her face, and whispered. It was never real, but it was necessary. Then, she placed the box in the fireplace and watched as the flames turned the past into dust. The next week, Elise organized a charity auction featuring Claire's newest collection. The theme was Asterisk Rebirth. Asterisk each piece told a story, broken mirrors, fading masks, hearts stitched back together. The final painting, titled Asterisk, unscripted. Asterisk showed a woman walking offstage into sunlight, her veil falling behind her like a shadow left behind. When the crowd applauded, Claire stood still, tears glimmering in her eyes, not from sadness, but from release. After the event, a young woman approached her. Your work. It feels like my life, she said shakily. How did you move on? Claire smiled gently. By realizing I never needed to move backward. That night, she walked along the shore, the moonlight painting silver trails on the waves. The tide rose, erasing her footprints almost instantly. It didn't matter. She no longer needed to leave a mark to know she existed. She had already written herself back into her own story, not as someone's wife, not as someone's survivor, but as the author of her own truth. Spring came quietly, and with it, a kind of peace Claire had never known. Her paintings now hung in galleries across the country, but she no longer painted for recognition, she painted for release. Her life wasn't loud anymore. It was soft, honest, alive. One afternoon, she returned to the same beach where she had once stood after leaving Daniel. The sky was clear, the air warm. She sat in the sand, sketchbook in hand, and began to draw not a broken woman, not a love lost, but a face looking forward, eyes open and afraid. As she drew, a little girl ran past her, laughing, her mother calling after her from a distance. Claire watched them with a smile, not envy this time, but understanding. Love, she realized, didn't have to look like forever. Sometimes it looked like learning to live again. That evening, she hosted a small private showing at her studio. The final painting of her collection stood in the center, a woman standing before a mirror, her reflection no longer blurred. The title read, Asterisk, the end of the performance. Asterisk, the guests lingered. Whispering, moved, Elise approached and asked, do you ever think about what came before? Claire took a slow sip of her wine and smiled, only with gratitude. Every lie, every heartbreak, it gave me the truth. Later, after everyone had gone, she stood alone in front of that painting. The silence wrapped around her. Not empty, but full of everything she had built from the ashes. She touched the frame lightly and whispered, the show's over, then. Turning off the lights, she stepped outside. The night breeze brushed her skin as she looked at the stars. No audience, no cameras, no script, just life. And for the first time, she didn't feel like she had escaped her story. She felt like she had finished it. If this story made you feel something, remember this. Not every smile means happiness, and not every stage deserves your performance. Claire's story wasn't about a broken marriage. It was about a woman who stopped pretending and started living. Because perfection isn't love, truth is. And sometimes, the bravest thing you can do is walk away from the role you were never meant to play. If you've ever hidden your pain behind a perfect picture, this story was for you. Tell me in the comments, would you keep performing or step off the stage? Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe for more stories of love, loss, and rediscovering yourself. Because sometimes the most powerful ending isn't revenge, it's freedom.